Bill Baker is here, sometimes known as Dr. Baker. He is President Emeritus of 13 WNET. He's also Executive in Residence at Columbia University Business School. His new book, co-authored with Michael O'Malley, is called Leading with Kindness. It considers the role that kindness plays in being a successful business leader. I am pleased to have Bill Baker at this table. You should know I have to pay tribute to the people who helped make this show a reality. He's at the top of the list. So I am pleased now to have him at this table, which is the very table that we began with all those number of years ago.
Only it's got more scratches on it, Charlie. And whose paperclip is that?
I don't know. It's not quite as stable. So tell me what you're doing now that you have left. You're now only President Emeritus.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm President Emeritus of Public Television in New York, which means that I'm, I guess, with merit or without merit. I'm not sure which that means. But I've been really spending my time in the academic world. Right. I'm at Fordham University, where I'm a university professor in the education department. I'm at Columbia's Business School, and I'm doing some research up at Harvard. So I am really, really rolling.
Now, were you in Europe for a while at either Oxford or Cambridge?
No, I was at Cambridge for a short time, but I really, and we're working on a movie there, a film about the Abrahamic religions. But I was in Berlin, at the American Academy in Berlin, and lecturing all through Europe about the subject of this book and about American media. And they were kind of shocked. Free speech in America was the subject of my speeches. And people in Europe are just can't get enough of trying to understand what's going on in the media in America.
What is it they don't understand?
Well, they don't understand, one, the collapse of print journalism, because it really hasn't hit Europe the way it's hit here. And second, public media in Europe are so powerful and so strong and have such great resources like the BBC and ZDF in Germany, etc. And they can't believe that, say, public television, PBS, our network, doesn't have all the money they have to do all of the things that they can do. And they're puzzled as to why a big country like America doesn't have that.
Because they believe that public television plays a role in the life of the nation.
It's the most critical part of the nation for many of these countries. For England, it really defines the British people.
Yeah. And they pay for it by television license
television
fees.
License tax, a tax in effect on the television set. So it's a couple $100 a household at least.
I mentioned the word kindness, leading with kindness. What caused you to write this?
Well, after 30 years of being president of something or other, Westinghouse Westinghouse Television, and chairman of the cable businesses for Westinghouse before this, their programming businesses, and public television the last 20 years in New York, I started thinking about management, and I've been an employee. I've worked for 50 years. We figure that's about 100,000 hours of I've been working. And I have a PhD, and I've never used it. My PhD is in industrial psychology, organizational behavior, that I got at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. And I look at our own business, and I've looked at people I've worked for, and I've looked at myself as an executive, and I've said, a lot of this is totally wrong. You know, the way people have lionized evil bosses. Wall Street, The Devil Wears Prada. Donald Trump, you're fired. And I thought, all the psychological theory and the psychological practice shows that that's absolutely the wrong way to manage people. You don't get anything out of people with fear. You do for a short time, but for the long term, fear just does not work. So I teamed up with Michael O'Malley from Yale University, who's an industrial psychologist and a great writer, and we put together this book, and we called it Leading with Kindness. And then I thought, oh my gosh, everybody's going to think this is one of those public TV pledge books, that it seems soft. And we loaded it with psychological theory, and but when we talked to a lot of the people, we talked to a lot of the executives, many of whom you've had on your program, they said, we like the word kindness. We understand that word. It does mean something to us.
What does kindness mean?
Well, it means a lot of things. For one thing, it doesn't mean being a doormat. I mean, when we wrote that, everybody thought, well, what do you mean? You know, you've got to be tough. You've got to make hard decisions. So, of course you have to make hard decisions. Of course you have to tell. But it's like being a firm parent. But you are not a doormat. A kind boss is not a doormat. A kind boss is not one who just rolls over and does whatever his or her employees say to do. This is a firm person. As a matter of fact, too, there are a lot of historical figures who were kind but great leaders, you know, e.g. Abraham Lincoln. You know, I mean, many of the greatest leaders in all of history. And there was a line that is credited to Gandhi, who said, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness." Mm-hmm. There's a big difference.
But the essence of this is that with kindness, you will generate and motivate people to do their best more than you will with other sterner kinds of techniques.
Absolutely.
Like intimidation, like fear.
Exactly. And that's proven over and over again. Our publisher, the American Management Association, we asked them if they do a survey of their huge database of thousands of people, you know, to find out how employees felt about their bosses. And it was very interesting. Let me just give, this survey will prove this point. Just 2 questions. I speak openly and candidly with my boss. 42% of the people who had bully bosses said that that was the case. People with kind bosses, 73% said they spoke openly and candidly to their boss. My boss really listens to what I say. 24% of the people say that with who have bully bosses. 84% say that with kind bosses. And it led me to think, could this economic meltdown that we're facing be really one of the problems of management?
Because we heard some of the people at the top of the financial world say, I didn't know what was going on.
That's right. No, exactly. And they were testifying in Congress saying, well, I didn't know that. And they were probably telling the truth. They weren't lying. They were probably the kinds of bosses who scared the life out of the people down below. You know, you and I, now you've been running business for a long time too, and I've run these businesses for years. You have not a clue as to what is really happening on the line. You have to rely on the people who are working with you and alongside of you. And if they're not telling you what's going on, or if they're afraid to tell you, or if they're only telling you what they think you want to hear, you're gonna drive the Mercedes right off the cliff.
Here's what's interesting to me too is that how little people think about leadership in terms of those people who are at the epitome of leadership, you know, and how there is very little net training, probably more in the military. And in some places in corporate America than anywhere else.
Yeah, the military's really done an amazingly good job.
And they study leadership, and they have schools, and they have constant training, and they also have measurement.
Yeah, and the military's probably some of the best leaders in the world, and certainly in America, are military leaders. You know, it's very interesting that one of the people that we interviewed for the book, General Steele, who is kind of the #2, the chief operating officer of the United States Marine Corps. Yeah. And you'd think, geez, this is a Marine, the #2 Marine, he'd absolute killer. Well, what does he preach? He preaches kindness. And because when you're asking people to put their lives on the line for you and for their country, you have to have a relationship with people that is not one just based on fear.
It's a dependent on each other, too.
Exactly.
You know, and you have to understand that I need you and you need me. And I've always thought that leadership has to do with some sense of what was required of you, understanding the mission and how you contribute to the mission and how you'll be held accountable, because most people would like to know what's expected of them, how you'll be held accountable, and in the most transparent and authentic way.
Absolutely. You know, that's in this world that we're in, this world of public television. I think about my 20 years as president of Channel 13 in New York, and think about the hundreds, maybe thousands of people over that time that worked with us. And I think many of them could have had jobs other places, could have made certainly a lot more money other places, the same people working with you. But a place that has a real mission, And this goes for companies, this goes for working for governments, this goes for working for not-for-profits and for-profits, but a place with a mission that people understand.
A purposeful life.
People really, really put out. And they're willing to sacrifice themselves. People are willing to do more than you can ever imagine at a job if they feel that the job is important and they are being treated fairly. And this is a very, very tough time with everybody right now going through terrible downsizing, painful times. The worry is not only for these wonderful people who have to be let go, but those that are left. And the ones that are left, if they don't feel that their colleagues that they worked side by side with are treated fairly, the whole companies start to melt down.
Let me talk a bit about you. What's interesting about you is this: I met you because a great man, Frank Stanton, who I had breakfast with one day, and he also was a PhD in psychology.
Frank Stanton, who was
from
CBS.
Ohio State, had a PhD in psychology, and was a genius at the measurement of audiences. Was in the public opinion polling was what he understood more than anything else. And he called me up. We had breakfast, and he said, "I want you to meet Bill Baker." And I went over to see you, and then literally we put this program together rather quickly. My question is mentors. He was a mentor to me. Mentors play a role in terms of people's lives. Tell me about that idea.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that Dr. Frank Stanton was your mentor, but he was also mine.
Yes.
So that made it a pretty easy fit. Yeah, unless you have a mentor, somebody that you can trust and believe in, I think you really can't make it. I mean, all of us have, for example, in my long career, 50-year career in the TV business, I've had 3 people that I would say are incredible mentors. One was Dr. Frank Stanton. He's a man that kept the bar high, and that's when the commercial world was able to keep the bar high and didn't just have to go for the bottom line. The other was Donald McGannon, who was the president of Westinghouse Broadcasting, who hired me, and I later became the president of Westinghouse Television. He's was a man of incredible integrity, who took cigarette